Hi, it's Katrina. What if civilization began thousands of years earlier than we thought? Every ancient culture tells the same story, a great angry flood sent to wipe out humanity. But what if this wasn't just a myth, but a chilling cultural memory of an extinction-level event? We have more and more proof left behind by a forgotten world, those who were there before the flood.
The real story behind the great flood myths.
From the oldest Sumerian tablets to the Hebrew Bible, from the Maya to the Egyptians, there is a universal story of a great flood sent by angry gods to punish humanity and wipe the slate clean. Whether it's the biblical flood of Noah or the Sumerian god Enlil, even the flood of the Popol Vuh, nearly every ancient culture tells a version of the same tale. Why? Why does this specific civilization-ending, ocean-sized disaster refuse to die? Did it really happen? What if all of these myths, spanning continents and ages, were inspired by a single, real-life catastrophic event? Let's dive into the evidence and see if science can finally explain humanity's oldest story.
Before we get into the science, let's quickly track the mythological threads that tie the world together. I think the best place to start is in ancient Sumer. It was the Sumerians who carved the Epic of Gilgamesh in stone. This epic was old even for them. The ancient Sumerians took this oral story and carved it in stone to remember it forever. This epic is considered the oldest on the planet. It's about the god Enlil who found humans too loud and too disruptive, so he flooded the planet. A man named Utnapishtim was warned by a friendly god named Ea.
Ea warns Utnapishtim of the incoming flood, so he builds a boat to save himself and his wife, and as many animals as he can. This story might sound familiar. It was Utnapishtim who was the precursor to Noah. And speaking of Noah,
in Genesis in the Bible, God feels that humanity is too wicked and must be destroyed, but he likes Noah, and so God gives him instructions on how to build an ark. He gathers 2 of every animal to survive 40 days of rain, eventually landing on Mount Ararat in Turkey. In Hindu mythology, there's the Matsya Purana. This time, the god Vishnu appears as a giant fish called Matsya to warn a man named Manu to build a boat. Manu does what he's told, but instead of animals, he saves the ancient scriptures known as the Vedas.
The Hindu version also predates the biblical version, and so does this next flood myth from one of the oldest religions in the world that is still practiced in a few remote corners of the globe, Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism is an ancient fire-worshipping religion that began in Persia thousands of years ago. According to their mythology, the god Mithra shot an arrow into a rock, which burst open and flooded the world. Why would Mithra shoot a mysterious water-filled rock? Because the evil deity Ahriman tried to destroy the world through a brutal drought. To save the planet, Mithra helps one man build an ark, get his cattle on board, outlive the flood, and restart humanity. Even Zeus floods the world in Greek mythology. In Plato's work Timaeus, Zeus gets angry because the Bronze Age humans are too violent. The humans annoy him so much that he sends a flood. But before the humans can be washed away, Prometheus, the titan who gave the humans fire, warns his son Deucalion, who builds an ark and survives.
The recurring patterns are undeniable: an angry deity, a divine warning, a chosen individual, an ark, and the total destruction and eventual rebirth of humanity. These stories resonate with everyone around the world. The question is, why does every civilization have the same story? There must be some truth. Was there a single global flood? The truth is that the origin of the flood probably wasn't one big global flood, which most scientists agree is physically impossible. But it could have been a localized disaster so profound it scarred the human psyche for generations. One true cataclysm that really did almost wipe out humanity. Scientists are on the case to find out what really happened. Marine geologists William Bryan and Walter Pittman proposed their groundbreaking Black Sea hypothesis in the 1990s. Their evidence points to a single cataclysmic event that happened approximately 7,600 years ago in what is now the Black Sea region.
Back then, the Black Sea was a tranquil freshwater lake minding its own business. Then the last ice age started to warm up, and massive amounts of ice started melting. Sea levels rose, and the Mediterranean, in full dramatic flair, busted through the Bosporus Strait with the hydrological equivalent of a Kool-Aid Man entrance.
It was intense. The water surging into the lake was estimated to be 200 times more powerful than the water flowing over Niagara Falls today.
The result of this explosion of water was that the Black Sea's level rose 6 inches a day, swallowing 60,000 square miles in under a year. Whole civilizations, farms, and prehistoric homes vanished. The proof is etched into the very floor of the sea. William Bryan and Walter Pittman's evidence comes in sediment cores that tell a very soggy story. Their samples show a sudden shift from freshwater mollusks to saltwater ones at the exact time of the flood. This is direct evidence of a rapid ecosystem-killing gush of saltwater. They also found tree roots at the bottom of the Black Sea, clear evidence the lake used to be dry ground. But the biggest evidence is 460 feet deep. Here, archaeologists found a clear habitation line. Below this line, they found evidence of prehistoric human settlement, tools, ceramic jugs, and collapsed houses that were suddenly and permanently submerged. It's a snapshot of villages that were thriving before a wall of water violently swept over them. Even famed oceanographer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, dedicated his resources to this hypothesis.
Apparently, Robert was not done poking around the deep dirt places with expensive machinery just yet. His team scanned the Black Sea's floor and found a collapsed house, stone tools, and ceramic jugs, right where there shouldn't be anything.
His underwater scans confirmed evidence of ancient settlements, dating the death of freshwater organisms and the subsequent arrival of saltwater species to the same traumatic period. The only thing that makes sense is a flood. Ballard's conclusion is that a very real flood, powerful enough to traumatize an entire generation and destroy whole civilizations, took place here. Word of this massive, horrifying event would have spread through trade and migration, passed down as a campfire tale that grew grander and more terrifying with each retelling. The result was thousands of years of the same story being passed down, changed, repeated, retold, all the way until someone added their version to the Bible. This would mean that the flood wasn't one big global event, because if the flood was global, scientists would expect to see uniform sediment layers on every continent, which just isn't the case. Scientists have mostly found evidence of dried up seas and riverbeds, suggesting long periods of wet and dry cycles, but not global drowning.
If the Black Sea event was the inspiration, it would mean the biblical story is not a supernatural tale, but a cultural memory of an actual disaster. It was a local tragedy that became a global myth. But what about the indigenous cultures in the Americas, like the Aztecs or the Inca, who also have flood myths? They couldn't have known about the Black Sea. This is where the story gets complex. Scientists proposed two likely options. One, there were multiple regional floods. The end of the last ice age led to widespread rapid sea level rise and dam breaches globally, causing local catastrophic floods on nearly every continent. Or two, it's just basic human trauma. River floods were one of the most common and destructive forces in the ancient world. It's simply logical that many isolated early cultures would independently create myths about an ultimate flood to explain local disasters.
Whether the Black Sea flood was the single origin point or simply the most powerful old world example, the point remains: the Great Flood is more than just a story. It is a core cultural memory encoded into our very DNA, a terrifying truth about humanity's vulnerability to the power of water and nature.
What do you think about the Black Sea hypothesis? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Antediluvian Maps.
Imagine a world before the Great Flood, before Noah, Utnapishtim, or Manu became household names. A world complete with advanced civilizations and global trade routes. If such a world existed, it must have had maps. There is evidence of advanced civilizations before written history in antediluvian maps. Let's take a look.
According to a tantalizing collection of old world charts with impossible accuracy and a suspicious number of missing ice caps, someone somehow managed to map the entire planet in stunning detail while much of humanity was still figuring out pointy sticks. This is the strange story of the Antediluvian Maps, legendary pre-flood relics that suggest an ancient world far more advanced than our history books care to admit. The very idea of a sophisticated pre-flood civilization charting the globe might sound very sci-fi or fantasy, But scattered across history, we find medieval and early maps that contain information that should have been physically impossible for their creators to possess. They hint at a lost geographical knowledge, a world without ice caps.
The legend starts in Sumerian tablets, which describe a global flood in language that is pretty dramatic.
One line reads, "The earth screamed like a bull, and the gods fled to the heavens." You know, if the earth is screaming, something bad is coming. According to these ancient records, the world was flooded, and then a few survivors on a boat started the world anew. You know the flood story already. What you don't know is that maps from the Middle Ages show what the world would have looked like prior to the worst flood in history. One of the most hotly debated maps is the Piri Reis map. It was compiled in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral of the same name. It was supposedly made using ancient maps that he had collected that were even older. It charts the coasts of the Americas and Africa with an accuracy that rivals modern surveys, despite being drawn centuries before modern shipbuilding or navigational tools existed.
But it gets even more shocking. It's most notorious for showing a portion of Antarctica's coastline without its ice cap.
And then there was something even stranger. In the 1960s, the U.S. Navy and Air Force analyzed the Piri Reis map. Captain Lorenzo W. Burroughs noted that the map's geographical features matched the subglacial topography later revealed by 1949 seismic surveys. The captain was convinced that the map could only have been made by someone who had seen Antarctica before it froze. In a letter, he wrote that the map must be based on pre-glacial surveys of Antarctica.
But that's impossible because Antarctica has been frozen for much longer than humans have been around. Nothing about this map makes sense. How did Piri Reis draw a map with the seismic accuracy of machines designed 400 years later? This map, created in 1513, shows what the bottom of Antarctica looks like under the ice. How could a 16th century cartographer possibly possess the knowledge of a landmass that has been frozen for millions of years? But wait. There's more, because this map isn't the only one.
The Zeno map, dated to the 14th century, somehow charted the coastlines of Norway, Denmark, and Greenland with surprising accuracy. Just like the Piri Reis map, the Zeno map shows Greenland without its massive ice sheet. It was created by brothers centuries before European exploration officially charted these precise regions. How did the Zeno brothers know the geography of lands they hadn't explored yet? There is a theory that Zeno and Piri Reis made their maps based on much more ancient maps that they rediscovered hidden in forgotten libraries. Some suspect that maps from the pre-flood world, drawn up before even Utnapishtim, could have survived the flood. These maps then presumably made it into great libraries, such as the Library of Alexandria and the Imperial Library of Constantinople. Those ancient libraries are all gone now, including whatever texts they had housed.
But it's not beyond the realm of possibility to think that people in the 1400s had managed to find one such map and then use it to make their own maps.
This would explain why Greenland and Antarctica are ice-free in the Piri Reis and Zeno maps, because they were ice-free before the flood. And then there's Yehudi ibn Ben Zara's map from 1487, which includes parts of Brittany and certain Mediterranean islands that are currently underwater. The islands in his map are shown as dry land, when in fact they were already submerged by 1487. So how did Zara know about them?
The only way Ben Zara could accurately depict these submerged landmasses is if he was copying an original source map that had been drawn thousands of years earlier, when those areas were still dry land.
Together, these three mysterious maps suggest that ancient mariners knew more than just the best spice routes and how to avoid hungry sea monsters. The common thread uniting these impossible maps is the idea that they were copies of far older documents. Piri Reis himself stated that his map was a composite based on ancient charts passed down through generations. But where did all their lost knowledge go? Probably destroyed. History is not kind to ancient texts. Historians believe that many of the charts used by Piri Reis and others were preserved at the Library of Alexandria until it burned. It's a common theory among scholars that before the infamous fires destroyed eons of human knowledge, the Library of Alexandria in particular may have housed maps and documents inherited from Phoenicians, Minoans, and even older seafaring civilizations.
When these great libraries were destroyed by fire, vast chapters of global memory vanished forever, including the secrets to navigating a pre-flood world.
The maps that survived, like those held by Race and Zeno, are mere fragments, copied and recopied until they contained impossible glimpses into a world that should not have existed. They offer a tangible, terrifying hint that before history was written, much of the world was already mapped. Did an advanced civilization truly possess global geographical knowledge over 12,000 years ago? The Piri Race and Zeno maps suggest that the answer might be yes. What do you think? Do you believe these maps are legitimate? Did these cartographers know something we don't? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The antediluvian city that should not exist. Nestled in the Altiplano highlands of Bolivia, perched 13,000 feet above sea level and defying both common sense and logic, lies Tiwanaku, a city so old the Incas treated it like Stonehenge with a god complex.
The only thing more mysterious than Tiwanaku's vast ruin-strewn layout is the growing body of evidence that Tiwanaku isn't just old, it is antediluvian old.
This city may have been established before the Younger Dryas catastrophe 12,000 years ago. The end of the Younger Dryas is also known as the Last Ice Age, when glaciers went full melt mode, sea levels rose, mammoths had a really bad time, and early civilizations went the way of Atlantis. While mainstream archaeologists have said Tiwanaku is barely more than 1,500 years old, a much more controversial narrative is being fueled by star alignments, buried metropolises, and one severely underrated Bavarian archaeologist. This other theory is simple, if not a little outrageous. It claims Tiwanaku may have been built as far back as 17,000 BC. That would be about 19,000 years ago. That was a time when mammoths were still ruling the land and humans weren't supposed to be building anything, let alone a city.
Now it's time to meet Arthur Poznański, the long-lost Indiana Jones of Bolivia.
Arthur spent 40 years studying the site in the early 20th century, and he wasn't some fringe maniac who snuck in at night and dug up skulls in the dark. He was dedicated, smart, and passionate about this place. Arthur worked with astronomers at Potsdam Observatory to produce charts that showed Tiwanaku's Kalasasaya temple was aligned with solstices that occurred between 17,000 to 10,500 BC. The temple is also known as the Temple of the Standing Stones. According to his research, the temple's sun gate and stone pillars formed an astronomical observatory, one that no Bronze Age farmer should have been able to build. The temple aligns with the solstices as they were all those years ago, not during the much more recent Bronze Age. The sky changes as our planet and our host star drift through space. The sun is revolving around the Milky Way. And with the sun revolving around the galaxy and Earth revolving around the sun, the night sky slowly changes. The whole solar system is moving at about 450,000 miles per hour. What this means is that Tiwanaku appears to be in sync with our solar system as it was nearly 20,000 years ago, not as it was 1,500 years ago. Poznański's work was dismissed for decades as complete insanity, but now modern measurements are confirming his astronomical data. But does that confirm a flood? Because one of the strangest aspects of Tiwanaku is not what's above ground, but what's beneath it. The city appears to have been hit by a titanic landscape-leveling disaster. Its plazas, temples, and pyramids were buried under up to 70 feet of mud, while Lake Titicaca's shoreline was shoved back 17 miles. That doesn't sound like slow erosion. That sounds like the wrath of Poseidon having a bad day. Not to mention, recent excavations by Oswaldo Rivera, director of Bolivia's National Institute of Archaeology, claim to have found 5 older cities stacked beneath Tiwanaku, some as deep as 65 feet underground. If true, it means that Arthur Poznański wasn't just right, he underestimated the age. We may be looking at a city rebuilt multiple times before the flood. Under the more recent buildings of Tiwanaku appear to be the bones of cities stretching back closer to Neanderthals. So I guess that would make Tiwanaku the antediluvian New York City. And if that's true, then Pumapunku is the antediluvian Area 51. Pumapunku is an ancient complex within the larger region of Tiwanaku that is home to what may be the most controversial stones on Earth. They are called H-blocks, and they are more than megalithic. H-blocks were carved with laser-like precision, interlocking like 3D puzzles, and stacked like the gods were playing Jenga with 100-ton bricks. The H-blocks have baffled every scientist who has ever studied them. 'Cause let's get real, you don't chisel a perfectly symmetrical 90-degree notch into ultra-hard andesite rock using bronze chisels. Not unless you have a few decades per block and a spare wizard to help you. Basically, the H-blocks are considered too perfect, and nobody has ever explained how they were cut, carved, shaped, stacked, and polished to be as smooth as a baby's bottom. Some blame lost technology developed by a pre-flood civilization. Others think it was a special type of technology that we've all forgotten how to use, like sound resonance or vibrating tools. There is a school of thought that says the ancients had access to this type of technology. It's the exact type of technology you'd expect an ancient civilization to have. Who says you need nukes and quantum computers to be technologically advanced? And then there's the Gate of the Sun, Tiwanaku's ultimate showpiece. It's a single slab of stone weighing 10 tons, carved with an intricate iconography featuring Viracocha, the ancient South American god of creation, flanked by 48 winged figures like rejected angels. It's a lot. And during the spring equinox, the sun rises directly above Viracocha's head, like a deity being crowned by the cosmos. Some believe the gate was part of a larger series of monolithic portals, a literal hall of gods. Or perhaps it was an ancient symbolic stargate, complete with calendar functions and cryptic glyphs that nobody has ever fully decoded. Perhaps the cruelest twist in Tiwanaku's tale is what archaeologists have done to it. During the 20th century, in a frenzy of well-meaning butchery, huge portions of the Kalasasaya temple and surrounding structures were restored by filling them with concrete, dirt, and calling it a day. This not only buried original access routes and megalithic flooring, but also flattened the site's aesthetic, turning elegant sun-tracking architecture into a stubby imitation of its former glory. Archaeology wasn't really a clean, organized field of study 100 years ago. If there was once encoded knowledge here, be it astronomical, geometric, or something stranger, it is now under 3 feet of filler and rebar. Whether you chalk it up to forgotten civilizations, ancient cataclysms, or the world's most elaborate prank from aliens with a geometry fetish, Tiwanaku forces us to reconsider what we think we know about human history. Because maybe there's more to it than we know. Human society may have been around for a really, really long time. Maybe even for tens or hundreds of thousands of years. If you think there's any truth to this, let me know in the comments. I'm curious what you think about Tiwanaku and its strange secrets. Because if that was too weird for you, you're not ready for what's next. Planet X caused the Great Flood. Now, I have a question for you. Did something in space cause the global floods of ancient myth? Maybe something with a large gravitational pull caused tidal floods. Let me explain. The Great Flood, as it's described in the myths, makes no scientific sense. For example, in a global flood where the whole planet is dunked into a world-sized saltwater smoothie, all freshwater fish would die. But that never happened. Perhaps the most glaring error in the Bible's account, for example, is that the highest mountains on Earth were submerged. But that's not possible. There's not enough water on the surface of the planet to pull that off. And let's just say it did happen. Where did all the water go? It had to drain somewhere, right? That's kind of how it works. So unless the entire planet drained into Narnia, things are looking questionable. But we already know that flood myths are everywhere. From the Inuit to the Aborigines to the Greeks, cultures across time and continents tell eerily similar stories. There's always an angry god, a boat, a chosen survivor, and an ocean where there wasn't one the day before. So cultures did most likely experience a flood, but it probably wasn't the same global flood as the myths tell us. But then it wouldn't be, would it? Because the whole point of a myth is to exaggerate reality and teach us some lessons. Some blamed the Moon Woman. This is about to get very interesting. The Yamana people of Tierra del Fuego claim the flood came from the Moon Woman during a time of great upheaval. It sounds very poetic until you realize they might have meant it literally. What if an astronomical object, say a minor planet, swung by Earth in a gravitational slingshot maneuver? This would be a maneuver powerful enough to yank the tides, tilt the crust, and turn a sunny day into Waterworld. In other words, a rogue planet may have passed by Earth and its gravity messed up the tides so badly that flooding was widespread across the globe. Flybys happen all the time. Just ask NASA. The space agency purposely does flybys themselves to propel their spacecraft deeper into space. The only difference is, instead of flinging a probe to Jupiter, a 248-mile wide chunk of rock may have yanked Earth's oceans like a cosmic marionette while it swung around us. Astronomers have acknowledged hundreds of near-Earth objects, many with erratic orbits. Funny story, Earth currently has 2 moons. Kind of. An object called PN7 appears to be caught in our gravity and is currently cosplaying as a mini-moon. Like I said, Earth gets little stalkers caught in its orbit all the time, usually just for a bit. Sometimes it's enough to mess with the tides. If it's something huge, like say a planet, it's enough to flood every coastal area at the same time. Scratch that. It's enough to kick off a string of apocalypses at the same time. It could rip open tectonic plates, triggering global volcanoes and earthquakes. It could disturb weather systems, generating megastorms like the ones described in ancient texts. Scariest of all is that a planet getting too close to us could dislodge debris, which comes raining down on our heads as burning balls of rock. Or, if you'd rather the ancient myth way of explaining things, flaming stars falling from heaven. What if the people who claim to see flaming stars were just witnessing chunks of rock from a planet or an asteroid? It's certainly possible. Now here is where the hammer comes down. Some have suggested the planet that threw Earth's oceans into pandemonium was Planet X, also called Nibiru. This planet is said to spin around our solar system like an out-of-control dreidel. Every few millennia, it swings close to Earth. The Anunnaki are said to have come from planet Nibiru. There are fringe theorists out there who believe the Anunnaki came to Earth when Nibiru got close to Earth many tens of thousands of years ago. They created humans, ruled over Earth for an eon, and when Nibiru came by again, they left. They used their short-distance spacecraft to launch from Earth to their planet, which, given its proximity, wouldn't have been much harder than getting to Mars. Perhaps they left the planet knowing full well that the closeness of Nibiru was going to flood the place and destroy everything. Maybe they thought we'd all die, but we didn't. And those who survived kept the fire burning. These survivors ensured that the knowledge of what happened before the flood was passed down to future generations. What started as fact, slowly, over the next 12,000 years, morphed into myths, legends, and religious doctrine. Mainstream archaeology says that humans were foraging berries and gossiping around fires for 290,000 years. That's our origin story, according to most scientists. Total dum-dums living in caves for 290,000 years. And then suddenly a light bulb went off and civilization started. But researchers like Graham Hancock, Stephen Meller, and Brian Forster argue otherwise. They point to megalithic ruins, buried cities, and inexplicable architecture, like the site of Tiwanaku, as evidence of an earlier global civilization, one that was wiped clean by an extinction-level event. Let's not forget the OG gossip columnist of antiquity, a historian named Herodotus. There is a story of Herodotus meeting with Egyptian priests who claimed that multiple cataclysms had erased previous civilizations, some by water, some by fire. The funerary texts of Pharaoh Seti I mention a flood that destroyed mankind, which is echoed in the Book of the Dead, which was written long before Moses got his sandals wet. Herodotus even calculated Egypt's history as going back over 11,000 years. That would explain a lot. So, do you believe Planet X swung past Earth and caused a global flood? Or was it God, or multiple gods, or was there no flood at all? Let me know your theories in the comments, and thanks for watching! Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you soon for another awesome video on ancient history. Bye!